Year's End. Happy New Year! Yes, my Game of the Year thing involves an actual calendar year. I'm looking at you, Golden Joysticks. May to may my arse. This has been a quite mixed year, from the heady heights of heavy rain down to the dismal depths of dire, overhyped indie nonsense.
I'm alright.
So, Game of the Year was most definitely Heavy Rain, for almost all of the reasons in the review. A more polished, complete package was not released that year, and then layering an at times brilliant story on top of it, and still maintaining that level of interaction and ownership of characters that Heavy Rain reached was a touch of genius. Usually in a game, the first thing I will do when entering a new area is to explore the boundaries, to see where I can take my character. In Heavy Rain, I didn't. I just wanted to play on. That isn't really genius, of course. Still very clever, but not genius. We see this level of emotional rollercoaster in decent film quite frequently. But video games have always been capable of much, much more than mere cinema. So a story that would have been short, sweet and reasonably effective on the big screen becomes something greater when the character interacts with the game over the course of playtime Heavy Rain has to offer. Hopefully more games will take the storyline generation this seriously, whilst not forgetting that games are supposed to be enjoyable experiences. The release of Amnesia: The Dark Descent must also get special mention, because it surpassed every expectation I had about it. The level of cohesiveness and polish was staggering and a great surprise, doubly so since this is an indie game, an actual one too, not a retro game made by a published studio at the behest of a behemoth. From indie games, since they have such disadvantages, we have an expectation that they'll be a little rough around the edges, that the graphics and music are going to be competent, but nothing really special. On the plus side, however, they'll stand out in ways that big developers often miss, having clever little stories or gameplay mechanisms. Amnesia is both very special and very different, this game filling the niche of a Call of Cthulhu Dark Corners of the Earth style game, much like their earlier title Penumbra. Essentially, it's a budget price indie game with all of the competence, polish and gameplay of a really great big budget title. Last year's biggest disappointment, at least in terms of an actual game rather than a trend, is the lamentable quality assurance in Fallout New Vegas, which was so bad that the game was essentially uncompletable, or at least not in the way I wanted. Sometimes it would manifest in bizarre ways. I had to have a certain hat to enter the strip, for example. At a guess, I'd say it was something to do with having a fixed release date. It certainly wasn't anything to do with the engine needing updating, because it looks the same as Fallout 3. I don't know where silly ideas like this come from. The Gamebryo engine is a bit like the Source engine, it's constantly updated. Of notable mention are also Silent Hill Shattered Memories. Great music, great graphics, interesting story. Light on horror. Bayonetta. Before Bayonetta came out, I was actually quite looking forward to it, a wacky, over-the-top style game. Instead, I just got obnoxious, and that was just the fans. Aliens vs Predator. So you take Aliens vs Predator 2, update everything, vary the levels a bit, and there you go. That's a great game right there. If you take Aliens vs Predator 2, equalise all the races so that multiplayer is fair, and you basically destroy the game. I'm sure you can see where I'm going with this. Disappointing trends-wise, we have the rising popularity of indie games, where indie means retro games not necessarily made by indie developers. Games like Super Meat Boy, an attempt to replace fun with difficulty, praised for having tight controls, and I think this means that there's a little latency betwixt control and reaction on screen, but I mean, who knows? A lot of these phrases mean precisely zero. This is part of a wider trend that I call wangling. Games that are hard because hard's fun, right? You play them so that you can show off that you've played them. It's about bragging rights. The more old school, the better. The problem being that old games were, well, kind of bad. That's the reason things changed in modern games. Games had their difficulty turned down because they were too hard. But that's okay, because we got multiple difficulty modes, so everyone is happy. Except, of course, the wanglers. They say things like, modern games are too easy with auto-saving and auto-targeting, and rather than simply not use them, they insist that games should be without them. Hopefully this won't continue. Worryingly, I recently played Red Dead Redemption. Apparently, having a targeting system that targets enemies and lets you switch betwixt them is casual. That's the name of the option in the game. Now, I thought casual gaming was when you don't play very often, don't really have a lot of games, haven't bothered to become particularly familiar with less intuitive methods of control. To be honest, I see nothing wrong with that. Having an auto-targeting system is certainly not casual, though.
Do I know you? I hope so.
So let's see what 2011 brings. There is plenty to look forward to. Personally, I'm looking forward to Agent, a new Silent Hill, and with any luck, hopefully, Mirror's Edge 2.
Shot in the head on that raid on the ferry a few years back. Same one you got shot on. Pretty girl.